At least he was sufficiently good-looking to serve for a husband, though he could have borne to have been a little more rotund and stout. To that there would be added scornful references to lean husbands, and hints that they resembled toothbrushes rather than men, and many other feminine additions. Also, such crowds of feminine shoppers began to repair to the bazaar as almost to constitute a crush, and something like a procession of carriages ensued, so long grew the rank of vehicles. For their part, the tradesmen had the joy of seeing highly priced dress materials which they had bought at fairs and then been unable to dispose of, now suddenly become tradable, and go off with a rush. For instance, on one occasion a lady appeared at Mass in a bustle, which filled the church to an extent which led the verger on duty to bid the commoner folk withdraw to the porch, lest the lady's toilet should be soiled in the crush. Even Chichikov could not help privately remarking the attention which he aroused. On one occasion, when he returned to the inn, he found on his table a note addressed to himself. Whence it had come and who had delivered it, he failed to discover, for the waiter declared that the person who had brought it had omitted to leave the name of the writer. Beginning abruptly with the words, "I must write to you," the letter went on to say that between a certain pair of souls there existed a bond of sympathy, and this verity the epistle further confirmed with rows of full stops to the extent of nearly half a page. Next there followed a few reflections of a correctitude so remarkable that I have no choice but to quote them. "What, I would ask, is this life of ours?" inquired the writer. "'Tis naught but a veil of woe. And what, I would ask, is the world? 'Tis naught but a mob of unthinking humanity." Thereafter, incidentally remarking that she had just dropped a tear to the memory of her dear mother, who had departed this life 25 years ago, the presumably lady writer invited Chichikov to come forth into the wilds, and to leave forever the city where, penned in noisome haunts, folk could not even draw their breath. In conclusion, the writer gave way to unconcealed despair, and wound up with the following verses. "2 turtle-doves to thee one day my dust will show congealed in death, and cooing warily they'll say, in grief and loneliness she drew her closing breath." True, the last line did not scan, but that was a trifle, since the quatrain at least conformed to the mode then prevalent. Neither signature nor date were appended to the document, but only a postscript expressing a conjecture that Chichikov's own heart would tell him who the writer was, and stating, in addition, that the said writer would be present at the governor's ball on the following night. This greatly interested Chichikov. Indeed, there was so much that was alluring and provocative of curiosity in the anonymous missive that he read it through a second time, and then a third, and finally said to himself, "I should like to know who sent it." In short, he took the thing seriously, and spent over an hour in considering the same. At length, muttering a comment upon the epistle's effervescent style, he refolded the document and committed it to his dispatch-box, in company with a playbill and an invitation to a wedding, the latter of which had for the last 7 years reposed in the self-same receptacle and in the self-same position. Shortly afterwards, there arrived a card of invitation to the governor's ball, already referred to. In passing, it may be said that such festivities are not infrequent phenomena in county towns, for the reason that where governors exist, there must take place balls, if from the local gentry there is to be evoked that respectful affection which is every governor's due. Thenceforth, all extraneous thoughts and considerations were laid aside in favor of preparing for the coming function. Indeed, this conjunction of exciting and provocative motives led to Chichikov devoting to his toilet an amount of time never witnessed since the creation of the world. Merely in the contemplation of his features in the mirror as he tried to communicate to them a succession of varying expressions was an hour spent. First of all, he strove to make his features assume an air of dignity and importance, and then an air of humble but faintly satirical respect, and then an air of respect guiltless of any alloy whatsoever. Next, he practiced performing a series of bows to his reflection, accompanied with certain murmurs intended to bear a resemblance to a French phrase, though Chichikov knew not a single word of the Gaelic tongue. Lastly came the performing of a series of what I might call agreeable surprises, in the shape of twitchings of the brow and lips, and certain motions of the tongue. In short, he did all that a man is apt to do when he is not only alone, but also certain that he is handsome and that no one is regarding him through a chink. Finally, he tapped himself lightly on the chin and said, "Ah, good old face." In the same way, when he started to dress himself for the ceremony, the level of his high spirits remained unimpaired throughout the process. That is to say, while adjusting his braces and tying his tie, he shuffled his feet in what was not exactly a dance, but might be called the entr'acte of a dance, which performance had the not very serious result of setting a wardrobe a-rattle and causing a brush to slide from the table to the floor. Later, his entry into the ballroom produced an extraordinary effect. Everyone present came forward to meet him, some with cards in their hands, and one man even breaking off a conversation at the most interesting point, namely, the point that the inferior land court must be made responsible for everything. Yes, in spite of the responsibility of the inferior land court, the speaker cast all thoughts of it to the wind as he hurried to greet our hero. From every side resounded acclamations of welcome, and Chichikov felt himself engulfed in a sea of embraces. Thus, scarcely had he extricated himself from the arms of the president of the local council when he found himself just as firmly clasped in the arms of the chief of police, who, in turn, surrendered him to the inspector of the medical department, who, in turn, handed him over to the commissioner of taxes, who again committed him to the charge of the town architect. Even the governor, who hitherto had been standing among his womenfolk with a box of sweets in one hand and a lapdog in the other, now threw down both sweets and lapdog, the lapdog giving vent to a yelp as he did so, and added his greeting to those of the rest of the company. Indeed, not a face was there to be seen on which ecstatic delight, or at all events the reflection of other people's ecstatic delight, was not painted. The same expression may be discerned on the faces of subordinate officials when, the newly arrived director having made his inspection, the said officials are beginning to get over their first sense of awe on perceiving that he has found much to commend, and that he can even go so far as to jest and utter a few words of smiling approval. Thereupon every chinovnik responds with a smile of double strength, and those who, it may be, have not heard a single word of the director's speech smile out of sympathy with the rest. And even the gendarme who is posted at the distant door, a man perhaps who has never before compassed a smile, but is more accustomed to dealing out blows to the populace, summons up a kind of grin, even though the grin resembles the grimace of a man who is about to sneeze after inadvertently taking an overlarge pinch of snuff. To all and sundry Chichikov responded with a bow, and felt extraordinarily at ease as he did so. To right and left did he incline his head in the sidelong yet unconstrained manner that was his wont, and never failed to charm the beholder. As for the ladies, they clustered around him in a shiny bevy that was redolent of every species of perfume, of roses, of spring violets, and of mignonette, so much so that instinctively Chichikov raised his nose to snuff the air. Likewise, the ladies' dresses displayed an endless profusion of taste and variety, and though the majority of their wearers evinced a tendency to embonpoint, those wearers knew how to call upon art for the concealment of the fact. Confronting them, Chichikov thought to himself, which of these beauties is the writer of the letter? Then again he snuffed the air. When the ladies had, to a certain extent, returned to their seats, he resumed his attempts to discern from glances and expressions which of them could possibly be the unknown authoress. Yet though those glances and expressions were too subtle, too insufficiently open, the difficulty in no way diminished his high spirits. Easily and gracefully did he exchange agreeable badinage with one lady, and then approach another one with the short, mincing steps usually affected by young old dandies who are fluttering around the fair. As he turned, not without dexterity, to the right and left, he kept one leg slightly dragging behind the other, like a short tail or comma. This trick the ladies particularly admired. In short, they not only discovered in him a host of recommendations and attractions, but also began to see in his face a sort of grand, Mars-like military expression, a thing which, as we know, never fails to please the feminine eye. Certain of the ladies even took to bickering over him, and, on perceiving that he spent most of his time standing near the door, some of their number hastened to occupy chairs nearer to his post of vantage. In fact, when a certain dame chanced to have the good fortune to anticipate a hated rival in the race, there very nearly ensued a most lamentable scene, which to many of those who had been desirous of doing exactly the same thing seemed a peculiarly horrible instance of brazen-faced audacity. So